Thank you so much for being a guest today on the Think Small podcast. Really looking forward to today's conversation. My guest is Phil Whitman with Whitman Transition Advisors. We spoke once before on our pre-call, and our conversation really stuck with me. For our listeners, tell us about your business. Tell us about what you guys do over there, and let's just get into it. Welcome to the podcast.
Awesome, and thank you so much, Alex. Yeah, I do remember. It was a very enjoyable conversation that we had. So at Whitman Transition Advisors, we're the single largest advisory organization helping CPA firms in the nation. And believe it or not, we're only 52 people strong. And at 52 people, we're the single largest because most folks are like when I first started out, where it was me living the E-Myth, where I had a stay-at-home mom who was helping me do some administrative stuff. But one day I was doing a merger deal. The next day I was doing a talent deal. I could be facilitating a partner retreat, helping a firm with strategy. But in any event, one day woke up and just said, hey, I'm not building a business that I can ever sell. I am, really just, it was all about me.
Yeah.
And today I'm able to have a conversation like this with you, and I'm getting an email that a deal closed in California, and we got a new client in Connecticut, and things are just sort of happening. And it's kind of amazing when you put strategy and structure behind, whether it's an individual or two, and, really focus on what a business needs to thrive. So
when you said the E-Myth you brought up, it makes me think about, did you, create yourself a business that you're growing and you're working on the business, you're working in the business, right? Did you kind of just create yourself a job, or are you, really actually that businessman that you really sought out to be?
Yeah. So I think at first it was definitely a job. I mean, I always told my wife, I'm building a business, one step at a time. And to me, I would come home from a great meeting in New York City. And a great meeting was I met with a managing partner of a top 100 CPA firm. And I would come home and I'd be like, yeah, I had a great day. And, we had a big mortgage and everything like that. And my wife would say, oh, yeah, did you make any bank deposits? And I'm like, no. But I guess it depends. We all define great days in many different ways. And to me, it's never been just about the money. Obviously, you need to pay your bills and all that. But to me, a great day could just be like this, having a conversation with someone like you, sharing a story that hopefully someone will hear and something will resonate, and they'll say, wow, sort of like Phil was 18 years ago, just starting out, one guy with an idea, and well, you know what? That's stick-to-itness. And I say that wholeheartedly when people are saying, and I would come home and my wife would be like, well, maybe you need to get a job. And I would say, I'm building a business. And, she was more like that movie, Jerry Maguire, show me the money, Jerry. And I was more about, what, I'm planting the seeds. And I don't know if Alex, do you know how bamboo grows? Bamboo. So everyone, obviously bamboo is an invasive plant, and left on its own, it spreads like wildfire. But if you and I were to go outside right now and plant some bamboo seeds, clear the earth, plant some seeds, and come back and water it day in and day out, water it. A year later, we'd come back and we'd see a brown patch of earth, and there would be no growth. And in year two, we would water it and fertilize it. And at the end of year two, it would still just be a brown patch of earth. But somewhere between year 3 and 4, with that constant watering, fertilizing, nurturing, putting those sort of required steps, just like in business, building relationships, in years 3, somewhere between 2, 3, 4, it would sprout 100 feet into the sky and spread like wildfire. And I think that's sort of like what building a business is, or doing business development. Too frequently people think, yeah, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna develop some business. It doesn't happen just because you go to a meeting and you exchange a card, and there is all that nurturing and fertilizing of the relationship and trust building, and do I like the person, and and the getting to know you. And I think that's what, like, the first 3 years of my business was all about. And I frequently tell people, don't get off the merry-go-round too soon, because you never realize how close you are to success, to grabbing that brass or golden ring. And I think all too often people get off too soon, when if they just stay on it a little bit longer, success may certainly come.
I know exactly what you're talking about, honestly. I would say my wife is the hardest sales manager I ever had. And a lot of the things that I'll talk to her about, I got to go to this networking event, this happy hour, and this happy hour, and she's like, oh, it just sounds like you're going to like the bars. I'm like, no, I'm meeting these people and we're having casual, like we're building a relationship in order so that way they know who I am, so we can grow those relationships and compound on that business together, right? Because it's, there's only so long that you can cold call, right? As a professional, it's a young man's game, I think.
Yeah.
Eventually you have to transition that into a advisory role, right?
Yeah, and look, yes, when you go to a networking event, there's a social aspect to it, but you're not doing it because you want to have a drink, or because, it's the, hey, I'm going out and I'm partying. You're doing it with, you have a mission in mind where, hey, that ideal client of mine, or someone that I want to meet that could be a great mentor for me, someone who's done this, or someone who has an expansive network themselves, that, hey, if I develop a relationship with that person, there are doors that will be open that I'll never be able to open on my own.
Right. Yeah. Hey, Phil, could I ask if you could lose the seatbelt? Or just from a picture perspective, it's kind of messing with the logo there.
Yeah, no problem. My apologies. There we go.
All good. Yeah, perfect. That works.
Yeah, no, I actually, believe it or not, I sit on the board of a company, and one of the board members was actually hosting an event up in Little River, New Jersey, and he does these like live coaching events. And I've been, sitting on the board meetings with him, never had a chance to meet him in person. And I looked at his schedule, and he's not going to be back in New Jersey. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna hike it up. It's an hour from where I am, and that's just goes to show you, you know what, you need to plant your butt in the right seats. You need to be in the room with the right people. And in my mind, if this guy is sitting on a board with me, he's the right person. And if I can, I'll give a shout out to him. His name is Bill Walsh, and Bill runs something. It's like a mastermind, and he runs this thing. It's a group where, it's a Rainmaker program, and I just wanted to see him in action. But, so there I am sitting at a restaurant, with probably 25 entrepreneurs in the room, all at various stages of, either starting a business, or they started and they're trying to get over the hurdle, and everyone starts small, right? You start small, and that's, you go from there. And so there were people in the room that, had 7-figure businesses, 8-figure businesses. And his mantra was, if you're not a 9-figure business, if you're not doing 100 million or more, there are things that you absolutely can be doing and should be doing. And so, like, I came away from this with, there's so much as business leaders, as entrepreneurs looking to grow businesses that we can learn from other people. And I think the first step is making the effort and planting your butt in the right seats, just showing up. It starts with showing up. I'm even doing something like this podcast with you, Alex. It's like, this is something that is very valuable to you and to me, very powerful, because if there's a message that you're trying to get across to your listenership, and you could bring people on who have done things that they're looking to do, or who can share stories that can be helpful to them in their journey, you're providing tremendous access to knowledge, and knowledge is power. And it's the same thing. People have a choice. They're going to decide, do I show up? Do I listen to this podcast? Do I not listen to it? And I'll tell you, I have a secret. I probably listen to easily 75 podcasts a week. Okay. I have trained my ear. I listen either at 1.75x or 2x. So if it's a half-hour podcast, I'm able to listen to it in about 15 to 18 minutes. And what am I listening to? I'm listening to other business leaders. I'm very interested in, what's going on with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. There's one I listen to. It's called 7 Good Minutes. It's literally 7 minutes. So I could listen to that one in 3.5, 4 minutes. And what does it do? It gives me good motivational tips. I come away with an idea, something that's thought-provoking. And I think, as human beings, I think we need to be lifetime learners. I mean, even the most expert person, this guy, Bill, he was saying, and he's trained hundreds of thousands of people. And he was telling us how he just signed up for this course because even someone like him, he needs a coach. We all need it. We all need coaches. Think of any professional athlete, any professional musician, anyone that's a professional anything. They all have coaches. So why shouldn't we as business people have coaches helping us with our businesses? And, for some it's the CPA, for some it's the attorney, for some it's a strategic person that's owned a business and successfully exited from a business. But I just think there's a whole host of knowledge out there that's up for the grabbing. And, I listen to those podcasts. It doesn't cost me anything but my time. So I just think there's great people out there sharing great stuff that can help all of us on our journey to wherever it is that we're looking to go to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there, Phil. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about, the growth trajectory of your own business and where you stand today? I know that you had said, you started out just maybe you and your wife, right? And then now you're over 50 employees, right? For all intents and purposes, you're a large employer. So what is that, path?
Yeah.
What is that journey like?
Yeah, so it's interesting. For the first 6 years, it was just me and a stay-at-home mom. It was my sister-in-law, and she was great. And she stayed with me for 17 years. She left at the beginning of this year. She actually took the knowledge that she gained from being part of our team. She did a lot of talent acquisition, a lot of recruiting, and she got an amazing job at Columbia University doing career advisement for people. And, at a prestigious Ivy League university. It was
Incredible.
being here, it was an amazing stepping stone for her. And she's really thriving there. But for 6 years, it was just her and I. And in many years, she brought us the biggest deals we had doing recruiting. But we were always very involved in the merger and acquisition market. And so, I slowly added consultants on a contract basis, independent contractors that were in different geographies. And, they would bring an opportunity to me and I would pay them a referral fee. So we grew a lot by what I will say is by having, strategic relationships. Okay. And those strategic relationships, ultimately, people decided, hey, I really like working with Phil. I'd much rather work with him all the time than part of the time. And, I think there's a couple things, always pay your people fairly. Don't mess with people's money. Paying fairly to me means overpaying, pay more than you have to pay. And, be very flexible. So I launched in 2008, 2014. I met with a strategic coach because as a solo guy, sole owner, I kept bumping up against the glass ceiling where, I would do like just $1 million of fees a year, $1 million of revenue. And, I'd pay the independent contractors and, I made a very, very nice living doing that. But I wanted to break through. But I realized the only constraint I had was not the opportunity, because there are plenty of client opportunities out there. It was more, there was only so many hours in a day. And other than a couple of independent contractors, I really wasn't leveraging, because I was still the guy, doing the invoicing, setting my own calendar, setting my own meetings. I grew up in a law firm environment where, everyone was pretty in this particular law firm, there was a pool of secretaries. No one had their own secretary. And it was like you worked on your own documents. And so that was sort of how the environment I grew up in was the environment and the way I personally worked. So I brought on this coach, and by the second coaching meeting, he realized I had something, and he said something to me like, I love your vision, but you're never going to be able to do it on your own. To which I replied to him, so why don't you fire all the rest of your clients and come join me and do it together with me? So now it wasn't as simple as firing all of your other clients. He was a Fortune Small Business Boss of the Year runner-up. And the only reason he was a runner-up, the year that he was the runner-up, iRoomba, the little vacuum cleaner robot that runs around and cleans your house, those were the guys that won, and clearly, probably deserved, although he did build a great culture, a great business. And this is what he was teaching other entrepreneurs how to do. It took him about a year to relieve himself of all those other clients, but he did join me full time in 2015. And when I look back and say, okay, it's been 10 years, it's 2025, and we went from me as a sole owner with a handful of independent contractors to the single largest advisory firm helping CPA firms in the nation, over a 10-year period. To me, that was very, very powerful. We're very much yin yang, however you want to say it. We're two opposites that complete a whole. He's great at doing the things that I suck at, and I'm great at, so he's sort of like the inside guy, I'm the outside guy, but he can function on the outside and develop and bring business occasionally, but his preference is the quadrant 2 stuff. So if you look at the Stephen Covey model, not quadrant 1, which is urgent and important, but it's quadrant 2, which is important but not urgent. So, and that's how you grow a business, in quadrant 2, because that's really working on the business. Quadrant 1 is working in the business, which as a sole owner, you're doing all the time. You might just have days that you're working on the business, but the reality is you're always in the business. So I spend a lot more time now working on the business. I do still develop a significant amount of business for our firm. I'm out there. I do a lot of public speaking. We're part of the BDO Alliance of Firms, so we present thought leadership. And we're a profession that's been going through more change in the last 4 years than we have in the prior 134 years, which I believe is how long public accounting has been a profession. And And what I mean by that is private equity has come in, other strategic investors have come in. They see this business that's serving so many other businesses and high net worth individuals as invaluable, and I certainly can understand why. It's just been absolutely phenomenal for the firms that have taken investments, and I still think we haven't scratched the tip of the iceberg yet.
It's, I mean, well, Jersey, for those out there that are listening, is an exceptionally rich of opportunity, and the Northeast in general, right? And there's always opportunity. When you think of what your actual like market share is, it's 0.1,000th of a percent, right? It's there's always opportunity. I'm very excited for that for you. Why don't you talk to me more about sort of your approach, right? Or what is the culture at Whitman Transition Advisors when it comes to the actual advisors that are going in and talking with CPAs, and what kind of services are you like delivering to your CPAs?
Yeah, so, and I'm glad you asked that, Alex, because, having been the guy that ran CPA firms, and sat on, I'm going to say, the other side of the desk, the one that received the calls from the recruiters and the brokers. And I don't use the term broker to describe ourselves, but, most CPA firms would say if someone is reaching out to them to either get them to participate in a merger transaction or to show them a merger and acquisition candidate, they're typically brokers, have a certain style. And like I mentioned, that Jerry Maguire movie, it's always be closing. So, Alex, this is the best deal you're ever going to get. You'd be foolish if you didn't take it. It's like close, 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 close. Same thing on the recruiting side. And we are the antithesis of that. And what I mean by that is no pressure whatsoever. We commonly say it's your life. And because it's your life, and because we work with such smart people, we don't have to push them to make a decision. We're going to educate them on what's going on in the marketplace. We're going to show them multiple opportunities, that it's going to be a wealth of choices because there's more than one way to deal with succession and transition. A firm could continue to remain independent. We have our own podcast, the Independent CPA Firm podcast. We have a podcast, Everything CPA and Private Equity. So we're really trying to address the total market with the idea of we're not a hammer and nail organization. Meaning when you call us, we don't think, oh yeah, great, another seller, another firm to merge. There's that expression that, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen more than we speak. And we're listeners. And so when we have an opportunity, we don't blast it to every one of our buyers. We listen to what the prospective seller is seeking. Do they want to keep their name? Do they want to keep their culture? Do they want to keep, their leadership? Or do they feel better if, we merge with a larger firm, and we become a new entity or a new name to our clients with much brand recognition, much more than what we currently have. And we'll listen to them. And some firms are okay with going either way, but we'll listen. And then what we'll do, we'll share with a handful of opportunities. And it might be a large firm, it might be a small firm, and it might be a firm that is backed, by a family office, not necessarily private equity. It might be a long holder, because someone might say, oh, I'm concerned in 3 to 5 years, private equity is going to do a flip. Who's going to own us then? So if that's a concern of theirs, well, we take that off the table by, we'll introduce them to a family office that has patient capital and could be in the game for 10, 15, or even 20 years. So I would say very custom hand-holding, white glove service. And at the end of the day, if they do absolutely nothing, we don't get mad. It's okay. We've got a relationship that we've developed, people that we treated the way that they wanted to be treated. And sometimes those are some of our greatest referral sources. The firms that end up doing nothing that we treated really, really well because they want someone else to have the same sort of experience that they had.
Yeah, no, that a lot of what you've said kind of resonating with me. I was thinking about, I'm an employee benefits broker with USI, and I was thinking about a client or a prospect that we did a proposal for. We were able to get them comparable coverage and save them about $250,000. And they didn't take the opportunity, kind of just said, hey, we've got a lot of things going on this summer and we can't really make a move or make any changes right now. And I think a lot of my colleagues were like, hey, like, were they crazy? You just saved them, $250,000. I'm like, oh, well, we'll see what happens. They come around eventually. And without fail, all summer long, their newsletters, their LinkedIn's, all these initiatives. And it was cool to see that all the stuff that they had going on, they were really doing something very interesting. And then September, like just on Monday, they reached back out. Hey, we want to start our look for the end of the year. And because I think you're right, it's an advisory role. You're not, trying to push a square peg into a round hole. You give them the time to make the decision. You advise them, hey, this is a good deal. You should maybe consider it. If it fits now, great. If not, then we'll talk another time. I'm never looking to force anybody into anything.
Yes, and I have found when I personally deal with someone that treats me that way, the relationship becomes much more endearing, because I feel like I'm not just someone that they're trying to close. I'm someone that they're really trying to help, and they're listening to me, and they understand that, as if I'm the COO, the CEO, whoever I am, whoever you're dealing with, chief HR officer, that they have a lot of stuff on their plate, and there's going to come a point in time when this is going to surface to the top. And if I've treated them the way I believe they would like to be treated, and that's not heavy-handed, but just sort of advisory, focused, and consultative, and I'm here for you if you have any questions, they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to call you back. And obviously they did. So,
yeah.
Now we all have sales managers that we work with, and sometimes they're like, oh, you got to close it. You got to close it. We got to meet our quarterly this or our quarterly that. And you know what? We all have different approaches. And I don't think anything is a straight line. There are some people that call it luck, call it timing, call it they've got an amazing gift of gab or whatever it may be, that it might seem like they're closing all the time. But the reality is, I think we're in a relationship business, and I think if the relationship comes first, if there's a sale to be had, it ultimately will come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about when I had a sales manager at one point that said that today's success is a direct relationship with 4 months ago's activity, right? So, while there's a sales manager out there that's saying, hey, we got to close those deals, I think it's making sure that you have enough activity, that you're really talking to as many people as possible, and setting those seeds, like you said about bamboo, right? We're planting seeds and creating relationships right from the grassroots, and then waiting and always planting more and always talking to more people.
Fill that funnel, right? Fill
Right.
that funnel and fill the funnel. Be you, be authentic, and be concerned for who your prospective client is. And more than a few things are going to go from the top of that funnel to sales, that are booked by the end of the year.
But I think it's always about, it boils down to integrity as well, because that comes across, right? Like if you're providing a consultative approach, you're advising them, hey, these are your options, and you're letting the numbers do the speaking, and also providing them with a lot of resources. Ultimately, they're going to remember that, right? That you provided those resources.
Yes, yes. And you know, the other thing, Alex, I'm sure you've bought a car before. You
Of
know,
course.
when you think about your car buying experience, it's like, you know, you're negotiating a price and the sales guy says, okay, I'll be right back. And you almost know in your mind, like, okay, now he's going to come back and the sales manager is, or the finance guy is going to be with him. And, you know, we're going to go back and forth a little bit. And, you know, I don't know. To me, it's always been kind of painful, and it's not quick. And you're in there, and by the time you're done, you're real happy. You bought a car. You think you got a great price, but it's somewhat of a grueling process.
Right. You're almost glad that it's over instead of glad that you got a car.
Yeah, and now, so I happen to be going through an experience right now, which is very different. Where, you know, I've got a car I'm getting rid of. You know, at first I was like, you know, I'm I don't even know if I'm going to get something else. I'm going to go on Carvana. I'm going to see what they're going to give me, how much my car is worth. And so I go on Carvana. I went on CarMax, you know, a couple of those sites. And, you know, they sent me, here's the offer for your car. And Carvana's was a little bit better. And then they're like, oh, and by the way, if you were to get another car, you could probably save another $1,500 because now you're trading a car in and you don't pay sales tax on what they're going to be paying you. And so, well, maybe I should get another car. And I'm going through and I'm scrolling through and I'm looking at the cars and I'm looking at the pricing of the cars and the financing of the cars. And I'm like, oh my God, from the comfort of my desk, you know, with no pressure, you know, no finance manager coming over. And, you know, I'm smart enough. I could push the button on a calculator and figure out, and I could go online and at a Kelley Blue Book and see, you know, okay, is this a good value for the car? There's plenty of sites you could do that. And I said to my wife, I said, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to buy my car. Because I really don't want to go into a dealership
Hmm.
and have to deal with that. So and the reason I bring this up, when I don't think the sales process, the sales cycle, I think you and I as professionals that are involved in sales, yes, we're consultants, we're advising people, we're advisors, but at the end of the day, you know, the ultimate transaction is the sale or the closing of something. I think that soft touch that someone walks away, whether they buy or not, and they say, that was a really nice experience. You know, Alex, working with Alex was not painful at all. Working with Phil was not painful at all. They absolutely had my genuine interest at hand. I think that's how you create, you know, customers or clients for life. Treat them, the golden rule, treat them the way you would want to be treated.
Absolutely. I actually was talking with a colleague of mine this morning about that and my whole sales approach over the course of my career, because I was dealing with a rental car actually, and they were trying to sell me something that I didn't need, you know, so, you know, and I said, one of my first sales mentors said, you're not trying to find people, you're not trying to sell them anything. You're just trying to find the buyer that's looking for what you have, right? Like if you go out and you're trying to sell, you're just gonna run almost like you're gonna diminish your reputation and name, right? But
Yes.
if you're actively looking for the person that is a fit for the solution that you have, then you're going to amplify your name and bring up what your reputation is, right? Because you're providing tremendous value, tremendous resource. You become an expert in your own individual field, and then you only look for the people that want to work with you, right? If they don't want to work with you, that's all right. We can depart as friends. That's what I would say. But if you don't want to work with me, that's perfectly all right. We can depart as friends. But the people that have chosen to work with me, it's been I think I would hope they have only good things to say about me.
Yes. Yeah. And that's great advice. It really is. You know, amplify by doing the right thing.
Yeah, at all times.
Yes.
Phil, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope to meet you in person at some point. We'll grab a coffee or
Absolutely.
something.
we're both Jersey guys, you know. We'll find something. We'll meet in the middle, or I'll do one even better. We will be having some events coming up here in New Jersey. I'd love for you to be a guest of mine. I'd also love for you to be a guest of mine on our once a month we do a friends and family, which is an online where we have guests like you, where you can share with all our other guests and all our team members exactly what it is you do and what a great lead looks like for it. And it's just our way of giving back a little bit, you know, to folks that we're friends with and folks that we want to help. So
I very much appreciate that.
we'll definitely get that out to you. You know, there's a great book. It's called The Go Giver, and as opposed to the Go Getter. And I know that both you and I are at heart, we're go getters. We're going to make things happen. But this Go Giver, you know, I have always been a believer. You throw great things out there. You do great things. You give, 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 give. And it comes back to you in spades, flying colors. And I want to thank you, number one, for inviting me to be a guest on your show, because that's you giving to me. And I do really appreciate that. And Alex, it will come back to you in spades.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you, Phil, in person, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.